All right, Alexander, let's answer the questions from the live stream with Robert Barnes. And let's start off with Ricardo Alfonso, who says the Assad curse and the Zelensky curse both have a common denominator, Putin. So really, it's been the Putin curse, or we can call it the Putin pox. Well
The
said.
Putin box.
Putin
Go on.
pox, yeah. Sticky Mark says, if your first shot misses, never take a second shot, though these usual suspects ain't Kaiser Sose, LNPs from a crazy old ladyish in Yorkshire.
Okay.
Crazy old cat
I
ladyish
wouldn't,
here from Yorkshire.
I wouldn't discount the possibility that more will be attempted myself. I mean, just to say, I would be massively terrifying if it happens, but given how edgy the mood is in the United States, don't discount the risk.
Okay, from Nikos says, hello, Duran. I took a break from geopolitics to get treatment for my depression. So far, so good. Now that I have a job, I can support you, my fellow Greeks.
Oh wow,
Thank
okay.
you, Nico. I hope everything is going
Good for
well.
you for getting out of your
Yeah,
depression and getting a job. Congratulations.
congrats. Nikos also says, do you think it's a victory for Russia if history is shaped by liars condemning them? We are led by sociopathic oligarchs. Bendefori, Sparta, look it up.
I think that the time when the liars are able to shape events is fading fast. I think reality is smashing through. And the single biggest reality that's smashing through at the moment in Ukraine specifically is the Russian army.
Yeah. Also from Nikos, I would very much like to see you do a recap with Dima. He is so fed up with Ukraine. Now it's hilarious. Belarus is also getting more and more involved.
We should do it. We should do a follow up with Dima. I mean, can I just say, Dima's reporting of the war is exemplary. I don't always agree with his analysis, as he knows. Well, we're quite friendly. We're very friendly with each other, and we sometimes riff each other about this. But overall, I mean, he's reporting is I mean the most thorough and detailed around. So I think we should do a discussion because things are now moving very fast. Question is when, because we're busy people, and he's a very busy person. But we'll try and set it up at some point, no doubt.
Sparky says, great work, fellows. Always great to see fellow Southerner Robert Barnes. Thank you for that. Sparky, Sammy 295. Thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says, I'm not stepping down, Joe Biden. Okay, then we'll King George the fifth you, the deep state, probably.
This relates to an event that happened in the mid 1930s, 1935, when King George V, a very beloved and popular king, by the way, died in very murky circumstances. Widely assumed that there were all kinds of odd things about the medical treatment that he received, and there were all kinds of bulletins passed about his health, which were completely false. So the British people were kept very ill informed about what was actually going on.
Nikos says, you mentioned, Alex, that Greek people are against Russia now. Turkey will destroy us without the help of Russia. What do you see, Alex, amongst the people?
Well, I mean, did you say that?
I don't.
Greek.
I mean, I think we've both said the government, the
Yeah.
Greek government, is definitely against Russia. I don't think that's controversial to say that. I mean, is there a part of the Greek population that is with the government? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
There is a part of the population, but a large part of the population either wants this war to end. They would like Greece to remain neutral and would like the war to end, or are very supportive of Russia. So
I would agree with that. That's exactly my own understanding, actually. I mean, there is a fanatical pro-European, pro-American section of the Greek population, absolutely. But I don't think they're anywhere near close to being the majority. As for the Greek elite, the political class, of course, they are owned by the US and the EU, absolutely, and they're not going to change from that.
Yeah. Tish M says, ain't there a law against such obvious lawlessness? Davenport
Law.
family.
Interesting point. An
Yeah.
interesting thing. I mean, republics are supposed to be based on them. Just saying.
Davenport family said the audio was bad. The audio was a little bumpy in the beginning, but
Yeah,
it
got
improved
better.
as the yeah.
Yeah. Can I
Sherry
just
says
say,
thank.
audio from the US has not been good recently, and I wonder whether this is connected with the CrowdStrike events.
Mm,
Just say.
right. Sherry says thank you, Alex and Alexander. And 1776. I can't sleep at night with these leaders of stupidity and corruption.
1776, a very, very big year, by the way. P.G. Wodehouse had Jeeves, the famous valet. He said that this is a terrible year, which he doesn't want to ever talk about, which is very much the view of some people still within the British upper classes. Just saying.
Antar Das says check your audio. Yes, the audio got
Mm,
better as the stream went
mm,
along. Sparky
mm.
says, Robert, will the 2024 Democrat convention be as consequential as the 1944 Henry Wallace Democrat convention?
I wouldn't say so myself, actually. I mean, I don't mean that they won't be consequential, but they're completely different. I mean, the point about 1944 was that Roosevelt dropped Wallace. I mean, Wallace was supposed to be his vice president, had been his vice president, very loyal to Roosevelt. Many people believe that he would have been, if he'd been vice president and then had become vice president, Wallace would have prevented the Cold War. I mean, he had good relations with the Soviets. Um, I think this is a different situation completely, and we shouldn't compare the two. 1968 is probably the best comparison if you're looking for democratic conventions.
Paul McDonald, thank you for that super chat. Sir Muggs Game says JFK's presidency was dubbed Kamala. They'll try for a Kamala lot in the end of DNC
Yeah.
convention. It will be Salem's lot. Okay, well
Well,
said.
she is absolutely no JFK. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's true. Valley S, thank you for that super sticker. Sparky says, spoil BlackRock's plan, make Ukraine Russia again.
Mm.
Thank you for that, Sparky. Elza says, if there were people just filling empty seats and clapping when Netanyahu spoke, who was waving Ukraine flags some months ago? Same seat fillers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's an identical group. The people who go in and do what Robert Barnes said, seal clapping, they're the same people, and they're the majority of people in Congress. If you look,
Sir Muggs Game says Trump and Netanyahu will have a huge fight over who loves Israel more. Trump will win. Sparky says, Robert, after the assassination attempt, there's an acceleration of can't beat 'em, join 'em. I hope Trump doesn't think he's won them over. And when they're actually up to evil, please warn Trump.
well, my own sense about Trump is that I think he's much more savvy about all of this than he was back in 2017. In 2017, he became president thinking that he could win a lot of people over. He kept James Comey as director of the FBI. Disastrous mistake. He appointed people like Pompeo and Bolton, as we remember. He went with all kinds of people. He had Christopher Wray as FBI director. He had Coates as the director of national intelligence, even though I remember seeing Coates looking at Trump with absolute loathing in his eyes. So, I don't think Trump is going to do that this time. He seems to have a much, much more coherent team of people around him. Just saying.
Vladimir Rose says, thanks, gentlemen, for inviting Robert again. Dem Party became the most authoritarian party. Nothing democratic about it. Probably never was. Thanks for that. I am Valentina says, greetings from Arizona. Do you think Bibi actually got permission to enter Lebanon, and will the U.S. back them up?
I don't think he's got permission. I think he's going to tell the president, Joe Biden, he's still the president, or he has told him. I mean, there was this meeting that they had that he is indeed going to go into Lebanon eventually, and is asking the Americans for support, and he'll probably get it. Just saying. The people who are resisting this plan are the Israeli military. They don't want to go into Lebanon, but I think Netanyahu wants to send them there.
Loki says Robert Obama won't endorse her. Says she can't win. Is he still planning to bring surprise to Chicago? No, he's endorsed her now,
He's
Alexander.
endorsed her
Yeah,
absolutely, and I don't think there's any. So I don't think there's any
it's
doubt
done.
about that. Was going to. It's done. Yeah.
It's done. Yeah. Sir Musgame says John Helmer and the Russians not buying the latest magic bullet narrative.
I know they're not. I know that but of course, I mean, I think they're looking at this from a distance. Personally, I mean, we're not looking at a magic bullet situation. We're looking at a situation where he turned his head. And that is not at all the same as the story about, with Kennedy, where, the bullet is supposed to have gone all kinds of directions inside his body, which is difficult for me to understand as a non-ballistic expert, and I think very difficult for many people who are ballistic experts to understand. But nobody's talking about a magic bullet situation here.
Lada Moreau says, I truly hope that President Trump won't include in his administration neocons like Nikki Haley, John Bolton, and such ilk.
I absolutely hope not, but I think also J.D. Vance and people around him are going to tell him, for heaven's sake, keep those people away. And I think that's what's going to happen.
Atlas X says, is there constitutional wiggle room that would allow Obama or Boris Johnson to be Kamala's VP? Johnson was born in New York City, and the 22nd Amendment doesn't seem to clearly prevent Obama from being vice president.
I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine that Kamala's going to go for Boris Johnson. I mean, that's bizarre.
I think Robert answered the question.
Yeah, I think exactly. Yeah. I think so.
When he
Yeah, I
said
think he went
Shapiro,
into
yeah.
exactly Shapiro. I think that's who it's going to be too. Yeah.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania. Yeah, I think he answered that question in detail. Rentier Oligarch says Bilderberg Steering Committee Peter Thiel holds decisive financial sway over every presenter here, given his role in Rumble and Locals, hence their uncritical support of Thiel frontman Vance and enabling the fraud that MAGA will deliver its promises.
Can I just say, speaking for us, speaking for myself specifically, until a few weeks ago, until JD, the connection between JD Vance and Peter Thiel floated up onto the horizon, I was barely aware of Peter Thiel. I hadn't, really know he'd hardly featured on my, radar. Why would he? I've got, there's hundreds of other issues that we look at. Ukraine, China, Middle East, whatever. The idea that Peter Thiel has any sway over what we say is, I mean, it just isn't factually based at all. I mean, that's all I will say.
I've known of Peter Thiel for a while, and most notably, he was portrayed in the movie The Social Network with Facebook,
really?
because he was Facebook's first investor. Remember the scene where he calls in? I forgot who was playing Zuckerberg.
Oh, that's
in
right.
That movie. A good movie, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. The one with the Winklevoss, whatever they called.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I think Christopher Nolan. I think is that a Christopher Nolan film or?
Well, it might be. Goodness,
I think so.
I need to watch it. I need to watch it again, and I'll get a better sense of who is Peter Thiel.
Yeah, he was one of the first investors of. I think the first investor of Facebook, and he was in. Well, someone was portraying him in that movie, but I mean, that's Peter Thiel. Yeah. Let's see. Sparky says, Robert, is J.D. Vance related to former North Carolina governor and U.S. Senator Zebulon Vance?
I'm sure not. I mean, we didn't answer that one, but I'm absolutely sure not. I mean, everything about Vance suggests that he comes from a gritty working class family. I can't believe that he's connected to people who've already been in the Senate. Just saying.
Darlene Schreiber says, if they cheat, it would cause a national altercation. Is that their desire? They don't seem to have much luck getting us to altercate as it is.
Yeah.
Alexander Podachev says, if Trump gets elected, can the neocons still provoke a war with China over Taiwan?
Well, they will try. I mean, the question is, will they succeed? I mean, they will, of course, try. I mean, the neocons are very, very embedded in the media. They're very embedded in the permanent government of the United States. They'll be putting relentless pressure on the president all the time, as they did during his first term. So, they might succeed. We'll see.
Sparky says, Robert, bring church committee back to Congress.
Yes. I agree. Church
Sir,
Committee was the committee that looked into all of the events that the CIA and others had been up to in the 1970s, just saying.
Sir Muggs Game says Lincoln's bodyguard that abandoned his post was never charged, never fired, and remained on the presidential protection detail. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah.
Interesting. Older Watchman says, why did the FBI wash or hose down the roof? Crime scene where Crooks was the morning after. Why is the two-story building with windows next to and hundreds of Crooks's with clear view of Trump being ignored?
You are
Reference
asking
X
excellent
Chris Martinson.
Yeah, excellent questions. I'd like to know the answer to them. I don't know the answer to them. You can either argue complete gross incompetence, or you could say that there was some element of involvement in this, official involvement in this, or you could say that a deliberate decision was made to provide Trump with minimal protection in the knowledge that someone sooner or later would come after him.
Sparky says, Robert, will they King George V President Biden?
Well, we just discussed that. Yeah.
Sparky also says, Robert, there was talk of retardy Oswald having bicycle at hand as well.
I don't remember that from the Kennedy assassination. I mean, there's so much about the Kennedy assassination that, the volume of information is huge there. Let's deal with one assassination attempt at a time is all I can say.
Irina Burns, thank you for the super sticker. Sir Muggs Game says not buying RNC's The Prince and the Pauper ticket. OMG Puppy says the intelligence agencies and deep state were created by formidable people after World War II. Today it is being operated by a younger, less competent generation of apparatchiks.
Absolutely. Completely agree. The other thing that's happened in the US is that the political leadership has lost control. I mean, in the 1940s and 50s, Truman and especially Eisenhower had full control of the intelligence services. By the time Kennedy became president, he was already complaining that it was becoming increasingly difficult to control them. And today, well, we saw what they did to Trump when he was president before.
Matthew says, excellent as always from the Duran. Where does all of this leave us with Russia? Will there be war?
Well, this is the big question. My own, this things move backwards and forwards on this. I think that it's clear that the public in the United States and Europe does not want war with Russia. And that is already a major constraint because the political class does not want to have a massive peace movement, millions of people filling the streets. They don't want a repetition of all of that, especially when the adversary is Russia. So that is a constraint on them. On the other hand, they've invested massively in this project and they are terrified of losing. And also, if they do lose, they worry about loss of control within their own countries and societies. So I think at the moment, the pendulum swing has moved back towards no war with Russia. But, that can change on a dime.
Sparky says, Robert, odd that an FBI director would refer to shell casings as cartridges instead of spent shells, shell casings, or brass. Sometimes terms give away just how into job someone is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are things I don't know about because I'm not familiar with firearms. But thank you for that, by the way.
Sir Muggs Game says J.D. Vance has impeccable personal and political credentials. Now you know he's dodgy AF, to quote Ice Station Zebra film.
Yeah, I mean, again, let's give the man some space. That's all I will say. If he comes along and turns out the person that you all say that he is, well, we're no worse off than we are because all the others are the same. For the moment, he is talking a completely different tune. I would have thought it'd be very, very much easier for him politically if he'd taken the absolute diametrically opposite stance to the one that he has taken. He'd come along, been a fervid supporter of Ukraine, fervid supporter of the Ukraine war, ticked all the neocon boxes. I would have thought that his rise in politics would have been much faster and much easier than it has been up to this time. That's just my view.
Tishem says, does anyone have Mike Johnson third in line on their bingo card?
What a thought.
Yeah.
It's true. But
Tabernac says,
constitutionally, it's true.
Yeah. Tabernac says, pick a mascot, keep the coach, staff, and stakeholders.
Mm.
Mark Hewitt says, what happens if coming to the DNC, Kamala's ratings drop like a lead balloon?
Well, that's a good question. What do they do? That creates all sorts of reasons to worry and fear because they might do all kinds of things. We'll just have to wait and see.
David says, well, at least Bibi didn't get 27 standing ovations this time.
I thought he got 70.
He got more.
I think he got more, exactly. I thought it was 70. Was it 58 or whatever it was?
I heard 58, 59.
58 is what I heard, actually, yeah. But the last one I saw was 70.
Sparky says, Robert, watching video clips of that steep roof gave me vertigo. Shouldn't all law enforcement personnel on that roof after the shooting be reprimanded for not wearing their safety harnesses? Well said. Sir Musgame says, Obama, Il Maestro, is conducting the party orchestrating the removal of dead weight. Biden gone, Kamala implodes, and voila, the choice saunters into the nomination.
Yeah, I mean, there is little time now. We have the convention. Yeah, we have the convention coming up in a few weeks. I mean, it's going to be Kamala. She is going to be the candidate, and she's going to be the one who's going to fight the election against Trump. There just isn't the time to conduct these kind of intrigues. Yeah. Carry on, Alex.
No, I'm just saying they posted the video on X, and it's Obama and Michelle. I mean, they're on video now.
Exactly.
Endorsing
Kamala. Exactly.
Alexa says, I thought Biden would step down and Kamala would take his place. The Dems probably realized that was not much of an upgrade. This nomination just looks like incompetence. Now Western elites are not elite, and that is scary.
Well, as I said, if you go back to the live stream, I said this huge machinery of intrigue and plotting and conspiracy has ended up producing Kamala Harris. And it demonstrates again how decayed in some respects the whole political structure in the United States has become. Because I don't think anybody in the Democratic Party seriously expects Kamala Harris to be an effective candidate in the election, despite the fact that they're going to pull out all the stops to make her so.
Yeah. Sparky says, J.D. Vance having the right enemies makes me less skeptical of him.
Yeah, I agree.
The Book Nook says, how can the inventor of surveillance systems like Palantir be a good influence, especially if he's been funding Vance on his way up?
I don't know that he's a good influence. I just don't know. I'm not interested in very much in Peter Thiel. J.D. Vance is the candidate. He is the person who Trump has picked as vice president. As I said, I've been reading what Vance has been writing, specific memos that he's been circulating to other people in Congress and other people in the political system. And they suggest to me a clear, coherent, intellectual mind, very structured and very fact-based. He's the person we should be thinking about, not what Peter Thiel might be doing at the moment in the background, which might be nothing, by the way.
Sir Musgame says Trump has charisma. Vance has the charisma of a speed bump.
No, I don't agree. I really don't agree. I mean, he's got, he doesn't have Trump's style of charisma, but he's clearly an effective political operator. I mean, he managed to get into the Senate in a very difficult Senate race.
Patrick says, what a sad day it is to watch the death of democracy on the left. The Democrat voters weren't given any say in Kamala's undemocratic elevation to the Democrat candidacy for the November election. Shame on the DNC.
As a person who came from the left, the old left, the left that once existed but no longer does, I completely agree with you. What we have today is just I'm not even going to describe it. It's I'd say something that really would be too rude. I mean, I remember the old
Mehdi's,
Democratic Party. I mean, I remember it as it used to be, very different from the creature we have now.
Mehdi says, earlier in the Russian SMO, I asked if this all ends in a showdown between BRICS and the United Nations and who has the most influence in international law in the future. What do you think now?
Well, bear in mind the BRICS are supporters of the UN system. I mean, they are the big supporters of the UN system. What is already happening is that it is a major confrontation between the BRICS and the collective West for ultimate control of the international system, of which the UN itself is a part. That's how I would describe it.
Industrial Farting Complex says polls are now being fabricated in Kamala's favor. Her brand will enable the CIA to purge their subcontractors like Teal and his minions.
I completely agree. I saw one, by the way, in which there's about 1,000, fewer than 1,000 people polled, and about 2/3 of them were Democrats, registered Democrats. And, that put Kamala ahead. What a surprise. It's
John
absolutely
Scott
clear to
says,
me that there are two sets of polls going on. There are the polls that are published, and there is the private polling that is provided to the two parties, especially to the Democrats. And I think they're completely different from each other.
John Scott says, Kamala Harris, 2024. Life of Brian says, but Barnes, the move to oust Biden predates the assassination attempt.
It does. But of course, it must also be connected with the failure of the lawfare attempts and the collapse, the disastrous debate, which we all discussed. I think that the sequence of events that Robert was talking about basically started with the assassination attempt, but it doesn't, of course, exclude the fact that there was already an existing backstory.
Sparky says, Robert, shouldn't Putin take all of Ukraine if for no other reason than to spoil BlackRock's plans? Losing their investment can make BlackRock et al. Think twice about making evil plans next time.
Well, I think you might very well get your desire, actually. We'll see. I mean, we're not going to discuss in detail the military situation in Ukraine in this program. But all I will say is, literally 10 minutes before we started this video, I was just looking at the military situation. And again, big Russian breakthroughs in various places, Ukrainian troops surrendering. Um, it really does look as if we are now in a um, early stages of a collapse situation.
Cool Roy says, Kamala. Sir Buzzgame says the Smithsonian needs to save Biden's brain.
Why?
Pasha Moyer.
Why? I mean, is there even one to save? One to save? Hmm.
Pasha Moyer says, Robert, is this a fair summary of your view? Black pill, the deep state is clearly desperate. White pill, it's because their outlook is so bleak.
No, I think so. Yeah.
John Roberts says, it's curious to me that Joe Biden hasn't resigned the presidency. Is Biden hanging on to pardon Hunter after the election? Will Biden stay on as president until the election?
We discussed that in the program.
Sparky says, Robert, Nico House says Kamala's sister worked for Hillary, and that's how Kamala initially got into politics before Willie Brown came. So Kamala may be Hillary faction instead of Obama faction.
I think that there are so many different factions in the Democratic Party that trying to work out who works for which is never easy. But I don't see why one sister can't be aligned with one faction and another sister might not be aligned with a different faction, and that the two nonetheless dovetail and cooperate at various times because factions do. If you are familiar with the Soviet Communist Party, whose history I did once study, you would find that phenomenon recurring all the time.
Did I read John Roberts? It's curious to me that Joe Biden hasn't resigned the presidency.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I did.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
I lost my place there. Red Hood says, let's play a game. How would you classify countries in the West, like in the Game of Thrones? Some bricks, king on the throne, hand of the king, warden of north, south, east, west.
I never really got into Game of Thrones. I know an awful lot of people did, but it was so obviously like English history, the War of the Roses to be specific. I never really got into the details of it. I mean, the only place I seem to remember was a place called Westeros, which is clearly England. But I'm not going to make any other comparisons because I'm not really, a Game of Thrones person.
Derek says, is Robert a fan of Palantir? Is that why he doesn't care about Vance's teal ties?
No, of course not. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, he is somebody who knows J.D. Vance, and it's Vance that we were talking about over the course of this program.
Sir Bugs Game says, the thing is, Trump Vance love above all else walls, both border and waiting.
Well, if you're talking about reintroducing immigration control or strong immigration controls, that is a popular policy in the United States. Even the Democrats are now talking about this. Even Biden did. He made a bizarre claim, I thought, in his final address, his latest address, in which he actually said that there's now fewer people crossing the border than was the case in Trump's time, without mentioning the fact that this is largely because the government in Texas has taken the situation under control on its own border, contrary to the wishes of the Biden administration.
Yeah. Nino NPC says, can the election be easily stolen again? And do you think we are better prepared this time around?
I think it'd be much more difficult to repeat this time what happened in 2020. Just say. I think people are too alerted to it and too organised to prevent it. But I don't discount the fact that it'll be attempted.
Sparky says, Robert, is Kamala's laugh a nervous one or a maniacal one? Either way, it's disturbing.
It is. I mean, I don't think I can answer that question.
I'm still trying to figure out which pronunciation of her name is correct. Kamala.
Yeah.
I think it's Kamala.
I think it's Kamala, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. T. Dillon says, native West Virginian here. Robert is right about Appalachia and war government. My people did not fight in the Civil War. It is easy for me to understand J.D. Vance's point. RFK Jr. as AG, maybe.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, good points.
Fabio Matias says, why would the Kamala or Trump election impact the global South, BRICS, and especially South America?
Well, it will impact. It will impact the global South. I mean, the United States is still, arguably the preeminent country. What happens in the United States affects everyone. It decides questions of war and peace. It is critical to the future of the world economy. So, obviously, if we have a different administration with a completely different economic outlook, it will change everything.
GDNPS says the problem with democracy is every halfwit gets to vote, and you end up with a bribe-taking insider trading, giving 58 standing ovations to the war criminal that controls their bribe money.
I would argue that what we are seeing in the United States is the collapse of democracy, not its actual effective implementation. When the United States functioned as a proper democracy, events like the ones we've just seen over the last 6 months would not have happened. They wouldn't have played out in this way.
Older Watchman says, at free PDF, The World Teacher for All Humanity by Benjamin Cream, aka Imam Mahdi, Maitreya Krishna Messiah, not a religious figure or book. It's easy to find. Okay. Sir Mug's Game says, is in the final presidential debate, will the Democrat turn to Trump and say, I prefer someone that hasn't been shot?
Who knows?
Nino NPC says, Robert, does Trump possibly have any plans for you and his cabinet in the future? In your opinion, who do you think would be a good AG, FBI Director, Secretary of State, or for the Trump admin? He answered.
He answered that one, yeah.
Ahmed says, I really hope the West can return to the true traditional Christian values and stop the dragon.
Yeah.
The Alchemist says, did you guys notice that J.D. Vance did not attend the Netanyahu meeting?
I did.
Sparky says, Robert, do you think it would be better to complete the physical wall between Mexico and the U.S. than supplement it with Teal's electronic wall instead of foregoing the physical wall for the Teal wall?
I'm not going to get into the different questions about what kind of wall is going to be created. The important thing is that they want to create, they want immigration controls. And I think the one thing we can say with confidence is that the wall, Trump's wall, actually did have an effect in reducing illegal immigration. And I think that's probably what they will return to. I don't myself see how electronic walls or surveillance walls or any of those things are going to work in the same way.
Sir Muggs Game says, after all he's endured, Trump still thinks he's running for the Mr. President pageant. Thankfully, we've been spared the swimsuit section.
I think he's a lot more experienced and understanding of the realities of American politics now than he was back in 2015, 2016. And in his Bloomberg interview, he actually said that.
Sparky says, make Israel Syria again in those Ottoman Empire days. Levant Jews got along fine with their neighbors, whether Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. Fun fact, the Ottoman Empire sent ships to rescue Jews from the Spanish Inquisition in 1492.
All absolutely true. What the future of the Middle East will be, I have no idea. But the realities are, it looks like more war, and the events in the short term fill me with concern.
Sir Muggs Game says, it's Wall Street, not war. Iran versus Silicon Valley. Iran war. Obama gets what Obama wants.
Well, I'm not sure that Obama always does get what Obama wants. I mean, in 2016, he got Donald Trump, and he didn't want that at all.
Bieber Nache says, check BitChute for Ol Damigrad VOD webinar. Was Donald Trump shot or not?
No, I don't think there's any. I have no doubt at all that he was shot. The Secret Service has said as much. I don't see why we should assume that he was not shot. I mean, I think this is a fanciful theory. He was shot. Another person was shot and killed. There were other shots as well, and of course, the shooter himself was killed. So clearly, the incident, the underlying nature of the incident is clear enough. And I don't think we should, complicate things with theories that have no real basis.
Sparky says, every time someone says that Israel's our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think before Israel we had no enemies in the Middle East. U.S. missionary John Sheehan.
With the United States had many friends in the Middle East. In the 1920s, it was the most popular country amongst people in the Middle East, if you read the history clearly.
Let's see. The Alchemist says communism at its best.
Mm-hmm.
Sparky says, Robert, shouldn't Trump bring Cynthia McKinney out of exile to be in his administration? It would really piss off the globalists.
I'm not sure who Cynthia McKinney is, but sounds interesting anyway.
Ralph says, the Uniparty is shredding the Constitution and using it for toilet paper, and there is no outcry. What is wrong with so-called Americans?
I think a lot of Americans are very unhappy and worried about what they're seeing, and not just the latest developments. I think the latest developments reinforce the concerns and doubts that many Americans already have. Remember what Robert said, for example, about the reaction to the lawfare against Donald Trump and how people really didn't like it.
Jonah Pin says Ray's job is to investigate, not opinionate, speculate on anything. He should be investigating every SS agent on the scene that day and leading up to it.
You're absolutely right, but what he really should do is resign, because he's clearly not fit to be director of the FBI.
Upstream Culture says Shapiro thrown in to complete a throwaway ticket, a concession to Trump victory for 4 years of DS attack obstruct while they polish up Newsom for 2028.
Yeah, I think you've probably summed it up reasonably well.
Mr. Mike says Whitney Webb has challenged Barnes to a debate, more so over Robert's disrespectful attitude. I think we'll see ex Whitney Webb status.
I mean, that's between them.
Yeah. Okay. Ronald says Congressional Budget Office released a study claiming that the more immigration, legal or illegal, the better the economy. Can you comment on this claim?
Can you just repeat that question? I'm sorry.
The more illegal immigration, the better the economy.
Well, better economy for whom exactly? I mean, this is a thing always to understand. Economies are reflections of societies. If you want to talk about the United States, there have been periods of time when the United States has had high immigration, other times when the United States has had very low immigration. If you're talking about the period of greatest prosperity in the United States, which is arguably the 50s and 60s, then there was very little immigration indeed going into the United States at that time, and it had a massive industrial system. So, I don't think you can come up with simple statements like that, which, to me, that doesn't look like a basis of an economic analysis. It looks more like an attempt to shape the economic discussion to serve some people's political agendas.
BFTE Eyes Wide says USA is in need of Joseph Stalin figure who understands and can play the game while purging the nomenclatura.
I think if we I take your point. I mean, we are looking, we are indeed looking at a nomenclature and an apparatchik and all the apparatus and all that. So, but having said that, I still don't think the United States really wants a Joseph Stalin figure. I mean, you need to know a little bit about Joseph Stalin and what he did to understand what I mean.
Carlos Gasper, thank you for that super sticker. 674351, thank you for that super chat. Sir Muggs Game says Jamie Dimon wins in November. OG Wall says shout out to lovely Valley S working hard, earning her keep today. XO blessings. Thank you for that, OG Wall. Alex Businessman says if Trump is elected, will he declassify the JFK files now that he suffered an attempt on his life?
He said he will.
Snowy says your 3 channels are superb. Thank you, Snowy, for that. Shin No Billy says Whitney Webb has pretty thoroughly refuted Robert's position that Palantir isn't a CIA front.
Well, I don't recall.
I don't think he said that.
That he said that. I was going to say, I don't think he said that it wasn't a CIA front.
That,
yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Jamila says, good evening, gentlemen. Good to see you. I only have one question. If Trump became president, do you think Europeans will be friends with Russia? Alexander, I love your good day greeting.
I don't know. So thank you, first of all. I don't know how it will play out. I don't think Donald Trump and the new administration that he might form would aim for positive friendship with Russia, and friendship between Russia and the Europeans, I don't think is going to come anytime soon. But what the priority ought to be would be a de-escalation of tensions, a restoration of some degree of communications. And apparently there's a report floating around within the US government, admitting that there are far too many sanctions, swirling around the system, and that sanctions urgently need to be cut back. And I think the United States needs to start unblocking this whole sanctions maze that it has itself created, which is causing major disruption in international trade and which is affecting the US's own possibilities of developing an effective trade system with Russia, which it could do, by the way.
Peter says, religious question. I'm Greek Orthodox. Your thoughts on a Trump win, God willing, and what it means for Patriarch Bartholomew, Turkey vis-a-vis Ukraine. Ashamed and embarrassed of my patriarch.
Well, I agree with I agree with your feelings about Bartholomew. Bartholomew has disastrously played a political game in Ukraine. He's been led up the nose, in my opinion, by Jeffrey Pyatt and by all sorts of other people in the US. It could very well be that if a deal is done between um, a Trump-led United States and Russia, which resolves the situation in Ukraine, that Bartholomew could find himself having the ground cut off from under his feet there. But of course, Trump is not going to force Bartholomew to step down, nor are the Russians. He's going to remain the patriarch, for the future. I mean, that's the reality. I don't see him being removed, if that's what you're suggesting.
And Summer of 1970 says, thanks, Alex, Alexander, and mods.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Those are the questions from the live stream with Robert Barnes. Thank you very much.